Hey guys, tonight we're going on a journey, a quiet, contemplative one. Imagine for a moment stepping outside, not into the familiar glow of streetlights, but into the deep breathing darkness of a world that is half wild. A world where the concrete paths have begun to crack, where vines whisper over silent highways, and where the sound of the city has been replaced by the rustle of leaves and the distant haunting cry of an animal you've only ever seen in a book. This is the world we're going to explore. But I must give you a friendly warning: in this world, without our modern comforts, you probably wouldn't survive long. The wilderness, as beautiful as it is, doesn't make exceptions. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you settle in, tell me where you are and what time it is there right now. What does your world look like in this moment? Now let's close our eyes and take a deep breath. In, out. We're stepping back not in time, but in space. We're imagining a collective global decision, a radical, impossible act of humility and foresight. What if we set aside half the planet for wildlife? For the forests, the oceans, the deserts, the mountains, the rivers, the plains. Not as a park or a preserve, but as a vast, interconnected, and untouchable wilderness. A quiet retreat of sorts. It's a thought experiment, a whispered possibility. And it's where our story begins. The first thing that happens, almost imperceptibly, is a change in the air. It's no longer thick with the scent of exhaust and the dry dust of construction. Instead, it carries the damp, loamy perfume of soil turning, of new leaves, unfurling, of a million tiny lives breathing in unison. The concrete canyons of our cities, once monuments to our ambition, become canvases for an unstoppable living art. Lichens, those patient pioneers of rock, begin their slow, deliberate conquest. Mosses, soft as velvet, spread a green carpet over sidewalks and brick walls. This isn't a violent overthrow. It's a gentle reclamation, a slow and silent embrace. Think about the concept of entropy for a moment. It's a word often used to describe the inevitable march towards disorder, a kind of cosmic unwinding. But in this new world, we see a different kind of entropy at play. It's not a chaotic breakdown, but a return to a more complex, interwoven order. A human city is a highly ordered low-entropy system, built on a foundation of constant energy input and control. But when that energy is withdrawn, the natural world, a system of incredible high-entropy complexity, rushes in to fill the void. It's like a beautifully chaotic tapestry being woven over a blank canvas. The cracks in the pavement, once a sign of decay, become little rivers of life, miniature ecosystems, where ants, beetles, and tiny wildflowers find a new home. The rust on an abandoned car isn't decay. It's a form of oxidation, a fundamental chemical process that in turn provides the mineral nutrients for the next generation of life to take hold. A scientist might see this as the second law of thermodynamics in action, a system tending towards maximum disorder. But to our storyteller's eye, it looks more like a grand patient healing. The planet isn't breaking down. It's simply returning to its truer, wilder self. And what about the human mind in this new world? We are creatures of habit, of routine, of straight lines and predictable patterns. We've built our societies on the principles of control and predictability. But what happens to us, to our very consciousness, when the world around us becomes unpredictable again? When the wild is not a distant vacation destination, but a presence that presses in from every side. This is where our inner landscapes begin to shift. The human brain, a marvelous and complex theater of activity, is constantly interpreting the world around it. We build mental maps of our environment, of our daily routes, of the people we see. In this new world, those maps would have to be redrawn constantly. The brain, with its incredible neuroplasticity, its ability to rewire itself, would be forced to adapt. We might find ourselves more attuned to subtle sounds, to the shifting shadows of the forest, to the scent of a storm on the horizon. Our senses, long dulled by the sterile efficiency of modern life, would sharpen, becoming more alive, more connected to the world around us. We would, in essence, become more animal again. This isn't just a simple story of nature triumphing over man. It's a much more nuanced and much more fascinating question. What do we lose, and what do we gain when we give up control? We lose the clean, ordered lines of our cities. We lose the illusion of absolute dominion. But we gain something immeasurably valuable. We gain the opportunity to understand ourselves, not as rulers of the planet, but as one small part of a vast, intricate web. We would be forced to confront a deep philosophical question. Is our ultimate purpose to shape the world to our will, or to live in a harmonious and perhaps even humble coexistence with it? This question has no easy answer. It's a mystery that has puzzled philosophers and poets for centuries. And in our new world, it would become a daily lived reality. Think about the tiny, unseen wonders that are already at work. The Earth itself, a living, breathing entity, is made up of a complex and ancient network of fungal mycelia. This is a scientific fact we often overlook. Underneath our feet, a vast interconnected web of fungi acts as the planet's nervous system, transferring nutrients and information between plants, a kind of wood-wide web. In our human-dominated world, this network is often disrupted by agriculture, by concrete, by chemical pollution. But in our new half-wild world, this ancient communication system would flourish. Trees would be able to share resources more effectively, warning each other of threats and helping their weaker neighbors. The forest wouldn't just be a collection of individual trees. It would be a single superorganism, a collective consciousness we can barely begin to comprehend. We are learning more and more about this every day, but the truth is, we don't really know for sure just how intelligent or interconnected these systems truly are. It's one of the great silent mysteries of our planet. This transformation is not a single dramatic event, but a slow unfolding narrative. It's the story of a seed that finds a crack in the asphalt. It's the story of a wolf returning to a valley where its ancestors last howled 100 years ago. It's the story of a river once forced into a straight line, carving out a new meandering path, a path of least resistance and greatest beauty. These are the small, quiet victories that would accumulate day after day, year after year, until the collective weight of them shifts the balance of the world. It's a lesson in patience, in the power of time. We as humans are impatient creatures. We want to see results now to solve problems with a single grand gesture. But nature operates on a different timescale, a geological timescale, a timescale of 1,000 sunrises and 1,000 seasons. And in our new world, we would be forced to slow down, to observe, to listen to the planet's ancient patient song. Remember how we talked about the brain as a theater? In our old world, the stage was filled with the clamor of human-made dramas, traffic jams, deadlines, social media notifications. But in this new world, the stage would be cleared. The dramas would become more primal, more ancient. The life and death struggle of a mouse and an owl. The slow, patient dance of a vine climbing a wall. The silent, breathtaking choreography of a flock of birds against the setting sun. We would be witnesses to these dramas, not the main actors. And in that act of witnessing, we might find a new kind of peace, a new kind of meaning. We would be forced to confront the humbling reality that the world doesn't, in fact, revolve around us. And that in itself is a profound and beautiful lesson. So as we imagine this world, let's not just think about the big dramatic changes. Let's focus on the small, gentle details. The way the light would fall through a newly grown canopy onto a forgotten window pane. The way the wind would carry the scent of wildflowers across a once bustling street. The way the sound of a frog's chorus would become the new evening symphony. These are the moments that would truly define this new existence. We would be living inside a poem, a living, breathing work of art created by the planet itself. And our role, our new and crucial role, would be to simply listen, to watch, and to learn. The wild isn't an enemy to be conquered, it's a teacher to be respected. And our first lesson in this quiet unfolding night is that sometimes the most profound act we can take is to simply get out of the way. As the first quiet green wave washes over the land, the most dramatic changes are often the ones you can't see with a casual glance. It's the invisible architecture of life, the deep biological processes that begin to hum with a new vitality. Imagine the concrete skeleton of a city, the roads, the buildings, the parking lots. These are the arteries and organs of a human-centric world. But once we collectively step back, the land itself begins to perform an ancient patient act of self-repair. This is the essence of ecological succession. It's not a sudden jungle bursting forth overnight. It's a slow, deliberate choreography of life. The pioneers arrive first, tiny hardy species, like the fireweed or the dandelion, their seeds carried on the wind, finding purchase in the tiniest cracks. Their roots, like patient subterranean fingers, begin to widen those cracks, breaking apart the asphalt and concrete. They are the first whispers of the wild heart's return. A scientist would call these the pioneer species. They are the first colonizers of a barren landscape, preparing the ground for what comes next. They enrich the soil with their life and death, turning sterile urban grit into a fertile ground for more complex life. This process is a bit like how our own bodies heal a wound. A small cut doesn't instantly become new skin. There's a whole cascade of biological events. A clot forms, white blood cells arrive to fight infection, and then a slow rebuilding of tissue. Our planet in this scenario is performing a similar act of healing on a grand planetary scale. And just as our bodies remember how to heal, the Earth remembers its own living grammar, the ancient intertwined rules of life and growth. And as the ground softens, a second wave of life arrives. The grasses, the fast-growing shrubs, the saplings of birch and willow. These are the intermediate species of our ecological succession. They begin to create microclimates, providing shade and shelter, and their roots bind the soil, preventing erosion. What was once a flat, two-dimensional landscape of concrete now begins to gain dimension. A layered world emerges where a beetle can hide under a leaf and a bird can build a nest in a young branch. The world starts to feel less like a diagram and more like a living, breathing painting with 1,000 different shades of green. This is where the narrative of the landscape begins to change from a story of human dominance to a rich, complex saga of life itself. We are simply observers, now standing on the sidelines, watching a truly magnificent story unfold. It's a beautiful thought, this idea of the planet healing itself. But it also raises a profound and often uncomfortable question. What happens to the things we left behind? Our homes, our art, our technology? This brings us to a fascinating concept from geology and history. Imagine an archaeologist in the distant future. They would discover layers of our time, a geological stratum of plastic, of concrete, of glass. This is what's known as the Anthropocene, the proposed new geological epoch defined by human activity. Our footprint on the planet is so significant that it will be visible in the fossil record for millions of years. Even in our half-wild world, the ghosts of our presence would linger. The outline of a city could be seen from space for centuries, a faint scar on the planet's green skin, a testament to what was. This ghost city would become a new kind of habitat, a strange, beautiful blend of human past and wild present. Trees would grow from the tops of buildings, and new species might evolve that are perfectly adapted to living in the ruins of our civilization. The past is never truly erased. It is simply absorbed and repurposed. This process of ecological succession of a landscape returning to its wild state is not just about the big things. It's also about the minuscule. Let's talk about soil. To most of us, soil is just dirt. But to a biologist, it is a universe. A single teaspoon of healthy soil contains more microorganisms than there are people on Earth. There are bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and a host of other tiny bustling lives. They are the true architects of this new world, the tireless workers who break down organic matter and recycle nutrients. In our old world, with its heavy use of fertilizers and pesticides, we often treated this living universe as a sterile medium. But in our half-wild world, this ancient intricate system of life in the soil would be able to thrive again, creating a richer, more resilient foundation for all other life to stand upon. The concept is called a microbiome, a word we often use for the bacteria in our gut. But the Earth has a microbiome too, and it is every bit as complex and crucial to its health. This gentle reclamation of land is also a reminder of the strange, cyclical nature of life. A fascinating, if somewhat grim scientific fact is that our bodies after death become part of this very process. The nutrients and elements that make up you and I, the carbon, the nitrogen, the calcium, are not created. They are borrowed. We are in a very real sense just a temporary arrangement of stardust. After we are gone, those elements are returned to the great cosmic recycling program, ready to be incorporated into the soil, into a tree, into a new life. This is the ultimate form of ecological succession. The human body returning to the earth, feeding the very life that will one day reclaim our monuments. This is not a sad thought. It's a humbling and beautiful one. It's the ultimate proof that we are and always have been a part of the greater ecosystem, not a separate entity from it. We are just one small fleeting chapter in the planet's vast and endless book. And as the landscape changes, so do our memories and our understanding of our place in it. The concept of home would have to shift. In the past, home was a fixed point on a map, but in this new world, with the wild pressing in home, might become a more fluid temporary concept. We would have to learn to share our space to coexist with the wild that has returned. A fox might make its den in the foundations of an old building. A family of deer might graze in what was once a suburban lawn. This proximity would force a new kind of awareness, a constant mindfulness of our surroundings. We would be reminded in a very tangible way that our choices, our waste, our noise, our movements have consequences for the lives of others, for the animals we now share our world with. This is not a loss of freedom, but a gain of a more profound kind of responsibility. This new world also raises an interesting question about time itself. In our modern world, we measure time in minutes and hours, in deadlines and appointments. But the wild measures time in a different way. It measures it in seasons, in the slow growth of a tree, in the patient carving of a river. When we are surrounded by the rhythms of the wild, our own perception of time would likely shift. We might find ourselves living on a more natural clock, attuned to the rising and setting of the sun, the changing phases of the moon. This is a scientific and philosophical mystery that scientists still wonder about. How does our environment shape our perception of time? We know that our brains can be tricked. A fast-paced movie can make us feel like time is flying, while a boring lecture can make it drag. So what would a world in slow motion, a world of patient growth and natural rhythms, do to our inner clock? The truth is, we don't really know for sure. It's one of those beautiful, unanswered questions that would become a part of our daily lives. So as we imagine this great green expanse, let's not just think of it as a place. Let's think of it as a process, a quiet, patient, and deeply beautiful process of renewal. It's the planet remembering its own name, whispering it on the wind, and inviting us to listen. It's the sound of the earth breathing slowly and deeply, and for the first time in a long time, we are holding our breath and listening with it. This is a new story, a new kind of history being written, not with words on a page, but with root systems and creeping vines, with the return of silent places and the patient hum of the earth's microbiome. It's a story of a world becoming whole again. As the green tide swells and the silence deepens, a new kind of sound begins to emerge. It's the sound of footsteps returning. Not ours, but the footsteps of those who were here long before us. In this great expanse, where the concrete has softened and the trees have reclaimed their ground, the wild heart of the planet begins to beat once more. This is the return of the keystone species and the apex predators, the wolves and bears, the big cats, and the great eagles. Their return is not just the arrival of an animal. It is the restoration of a crucial ancient narrative. They are the master storytellers of the ecosystem, and their presence rewrites the entire script. Think of a river, for example. We often think of rivers as being shaped by water and rock, but in a famous scientific example from Yellowstone National Park, we learned that a river can also be shaped by a wolf. When wolves were reintroduced to the park, they began to hunt the deer and elk, changing their grazing patterns. The deer avoided certain valleys and gorges, allowing the vegetation there to grow back. The new trees and shrubs stabilized the riverbanks, which in turn reduced erosion and allowed the water to flow in a more natural winding path. This is a scientific fact known as a trophic cascade, and it's a perfect example of a keystone species at work. A keystone in architecture is the central stone in an arch that holds all the others in place. In an ecosystem, a keystone species is one that has a disproportionately large effect on its environment relative to its abundance. They are the architects of the wild, and their return is a sign that the building is being restored to its original complex design. Our collective withdrawal also means the return of silence, but what we perceive as silence is in fact a rich and complex symphony. The human world is filled with a constant droning hum of noise, the rumble of traffic, the chatter of voices, the hum of machinery. This constant background noise, a form of pollution we often overlook, can have a devastating impact on wildlife. It interferes with animal communication, disrupts mating rituals, and even affects migration patterns. But in our half-wild world, this noise fades away, replaced by a symphony of natural sounds. The hoot of an owl, the rustle of a mouse in the undergrowth, the distant howl of a wolf. For a human, these sounds are a source of peace, a gentle lullaby. But for the animals, they are a vital form of communication, a complex language spoken over a vast, quiet distance. This is the sound of a truly healthy planet, a vibrant, living choir that has been silent for far too long. This raises a deep philosophical question about our own perception. We are so accustomed to the world we have built that we often mistake its absence for a loss. The silence of the forest is not an absence of sound. It is an abundance of different sounds. The emptiness of a vast prairie is not a lack of life. It is a canvas of subtle, hidden movements. We are so used to a world of constant human drama that we have forgotten how to read the subtle poetry of the wild. Our minds, those complex theaters we spoke of earlier, have been trained to focus on the loud and the immediate. But in this new world, we would have to learn to listen to the quiet, to observe the subtle, to find meaning, not in the grand gestures, but in the tiny, intricate details. This is not a loss, but a profound and beautiful expansion of our consciousness. And what about the deep biological mysteries that are still unsolved? For all our scientific progress, there are still so many things we don't understand about the wild world. Take the concept of animal sentience, for example. We've long believed that humans are the only ones with a complex inner life, but a growing body of evidence suggests that animals from elephants to whales have rich emotional lives, complex memories, and even a form of self-awareness. A fascinating and little-known scientific fact is that elephants are believed to grieve their dead, returning to the bones of their loved ones years later. They touch and mourn in a way that feels deeply familiar to us. What other mysteries lie waiting to be discovered in this new quiet world? The truth is, we don't really know for sure. There are countless species we still haven't discovered and countless behaviors we haven't witnessed. This half-wild planet would not just be a refuge for animals. It would be a vast living laboratory, a source of endless wonder and new knowledge. The return of apex predators also brings with it a fascinating paradox. The wild is by its very nature a place of life and death, of struggle and survival. We in our modern world have sought to eliminate this struggle to create a sanitized, predictable existence. But in doing so, we've also created a less resilient, less vibrant world. The struggle for survival is what makes an ecosystem strong. It culls the weak, it keeps populations in check, and it drives the process of evolution. A healthy ecosystem is not a utopia of peaceful coexistence. It's a dynamic, brutal, and beautiful dance of life and death. The return of the predators is a return of this vital ancient rhythm. It's a reminder that true health comes not from the absence of struggle, but from the ability to navigate it. This brings us to a simple but profound scientific concept, the food web. In our old world, with its monoculture farms and its fragmented habitats, the food web was often a simple straight line. We grew one crop, we ate one animal, and we disrupted the complex web of interactions that supports a healthy ecosystem. But in our half-wild world, the food web would return to its true form, a tangled, intricate, and resilient net. The death of one animal would feed 1,000 others, from the scavengers that pick at its bones to the microbes that break down its remains. Every life and every death would have a purpose, a role to play in the grand cyclical dance of the planet. There is no waste, only transformation. And as the wild returns, so too does a forgotten part of our own human story. For most of our history, we lived in close proximity to the wild. We were hunters, gatherers, farmers, and our lives were shaped by the seasons, by the movements of animals, by the whims of the weather. We had a deep visceral understanding of the natural world, a kind of intuitive knowledge that has been lost in our modern urban existence. In this new world, we would have to relearn this ancient knowledge. We would have to become students of the land again, observers of the sky, and listeners to the wind. This is not a step back in time, but a step forward into a more complete, more balanced existence. We would be reconnecting with a part of ourselves that has been dormant for a long, long time. So as we listen to the whispers of this wild heart, let's remember that we are not just giving back to the planet. We are also giving back to ourselves. We are restoring a part of our own humanity, a part that has been dulled by the noise and the distractions of our modern world. We are learning to listen to a different kind of truth, a truth that is spoken not in words, but in the rustle of leaves, the hoot of an owl, and the distant haunting howl of a wolf under a vast and starry sky. This is the sound of a world becoming whole again, and it is a sound we would do well to listen to. As the echoes of the returning wolves fade into the distance, a different kind of shift is underway, a shift from the audible to the sensory. We talked about how the absence of human noise allows for the return of a natural symphony. But what about the absence of human light? As we recede, so too do the constellations of our cities. The billions of artificial lights that once washed out the night sky begin to dim and wink out. And as they do, the veil is lifted, revealing a world that has been hidden from us for generations. The full breathtaking canvas of the cosmos, from the gentle arc of the Milky Way to the distant shimmering galaxies, becomes visible again. This is more than a beautiful sight. It is a profound restoration of a natural rhythm. Light pollution is a scientific reality we've only recently begun to fully appreciate. It doesn't just block our view of the stars. It profoundly impacts the lives of countless species. Nocturnal animals, for instance, rely on the darkness to hunt, to navigate, and to mate. The artificial glow of our cities can disorient migrating birds, confuse sea turtles hatching on beaches, and disrupt the delicate dance of predator and prey. In this new half-wild world, the night sky is no longer a canvas of 1,000 tiny man-made suns, but a vast, breathing expanse of true darkness. This allows for the return of a vibrant, complex nocturnal world. The bats, those silent, winged guardians of the night, can hunt more effectively. The owls, with their keen eyesight, can find their prey more easily. And for us as humans, the return of the stars would be a humbling and beautiful reminder of our place in the universe. We would be reconnecting with a part of our ancient heritage, a time when our ancestors used the stars as a clock, a calendar, and a map. And what about the deep philosophical questions this raises? In our old world, the constant light was a symbol of our dominion, our ability to conquer the night. We lit up our world to push back the shadows, to create a sense of safety and control. But in this new world, the darkness returns not as a threat, but as a source of wonder. The darkness of a true wilderness is not an emptiness. It is a fullness. It's filled with the rustle of unseen lives, the hoot of a distant owl, the scent of night-blooming flowers. It forces us to confront our own fears of the unknown, to sit with the mystery of a world we cannot fully see. This is not a loss of control, but an embrace of humility. It's a recognition that the world is not ours to control, but ours to be a part of. And in that acceptance, there is a profound sense of peace. This takes us to a fascinating scientific concept, the pineal gland. This tiny pea-sized gland in the center of our brain is often called our third eye. It's responsible for producing melatonin, the hormone that regulates our sleep-wake cycles, our circadian rhythm. The pineal gland is directly influenced by light and darkness. When we are exposed to constant artificial light, especially the blue light from screens, it can disrupt our melatonin production, leading to sleep problems, stress, and a whole host of other health issues. But in our half-wild world, with its clear distinction between day and night, our natural rhythms would be restored. Our sleep would be deeper, our minds clearer, and our bodies healthier. We would be reconnecting with our own biological clock, a clock that has been ticking for millions of years long before the invention of the light bulb. Think of it this way. Our old world was a noisy, brightly lit theater. The constant drama, the endless stream of information, the artificial glow. It was all designed to keep us awake, to keep us engaged, to keep us consuming. But in our new half-wild world, the theater is closed, the lights are out, and we are free to simply be. Free to sit in the quiet darkness, to listen to the whisper of the wind, and to watch the silent, breathtaking ballet of the stars. This is not an escape from reality. It is a return to it. It's a return to a deeper, more fundamental truth of our existence. And what about the things we still don't know? Physicists still wonder about the true nature of dark matter and dark energy, the mysterious forces that make up the vast majority of our universe. We can't see them, we can't touch them, but we know they are there because of their gravitational effects on the things we can see. In a way, this is a beautiful metaphor for our new world. The truly important things, the complex interactions of an ecosystem, the silent rhythms of the cosmos, the deep emotional lives of animals, are often the things we can't see with our naked eye. They are the dark matter of our planet, the hidden forces that hold everything together. And in this new world, with the distracting glare of our own presence removed, we would finally have the chance to see and to understand these hidden forces. This is not a story of loss, but of rediscovery. We are rediscovering the beauty of true darkness, the wonder of a truly star-filled sky, and the profound wisdom of our own biological rhythms. It's a return to a more balanced existence, a world where day and night are not just two sides of a coin, but two halves of a whole. One cannot exist without the other. And in our old world, we tried to eliminate one half of that equation. But in this new world, we are embracing both. We are learning to live with the rhythm of the planet, not against it. And this leads to a simple but profound realization. For a long time, we've thought of ourselves as the protagonists of the story of this planet, the main characters. But what if we were just a supporting cast member? What if the true protagonists are the mountains, the rivers, the oceans, the stars? What if the true story is not about us, but about the slow, patient unfolding of a world far grander, far older, and far more complex than we could ever imagine? This is one of the beautiful and humbling questions that our new half-wild world forces us to ask. And in the quiet, star-filled darkness, we might finally be able to hear the answer. With the sky restored to its full starry glory, our gaze now turns downward to the veins and arteries of the planet itself, the great rivers. For centuries, we saw them not as living entities, but as resources to be managed, to be controlled, to be harnessed. We dammed them for power, dredged them for shipping, and channeled them into concrete culverts. We forced their wild, meandering hearts into straight, predictable lines. But in our new half-wild world, the rivers remember their way. The patient, unstoppable force of water, when no longer constrained by human hands, begins to perform a magnificent act of self-reclamation. The first thing to happen is the gradual erosion of the dams. A dam is an impressive feat of human engineering, but it is not a permanent feature on a geological timescale. With no human maintenance, the relentless pressure of the water combined with the slow patient forces of weather and time begins to wear them down. Cracks appear, foundations weaken, and eventually, in a slow-motion cascade, the concrete gives way. This is a scientific process known as geomorphology, the study of how the Earth's surface is shaped by physical, chemical, and biological processes. It's the story of how water and rock over vast stretches of time carve the landscape into mountains and valleys. In this scenario, we are simply allowing that ancient process to resume. And as the dams fall, a collective sigh of relief seems to ripple through the landscape. The river, once a stagnant lake behind a concrete wall, is set free. The sediment that has been building up for decades is flushed downstream, revitalizing the deltas and coastal wetlands that had been starving for nutrients. The water temperature, once unnaturally warm behind the dam, begins to cool, allowing for the return of native fish species that require colder, faster-moving water. This is the moment of a great collective awakening for the river ecosystem. The salmon, those incredible navigators of the wild, can now swim upstream to their ancient spawning grounds, a journey that has been blocked for generations. Their return is not just the return of a single species. It is the return of a vital biological resource. Their bodies after spawning provide a feast for bears, eagles, and a host of other animals, and the nutrients they carry from the ocean fertilize the very trees and plants that line the riverbanks. This brings us to a little-known but fascinating scientific fact, the concept of river blindness. Not the disease that affects humans, but the loss of a river's natural memory. We as humans have a memory, a story of our past. A river also has a memory, and it is written in its winding path in the oxbow lakes it leaves behind and in the floodplains it carves out. This memory is a record of its natural flow, its floods and droughts, its constant patient dialogue with the land around it. When we channel a river into a straight line, we erase that memory. We force it to forget its own nature. But in our half-wild world, the rivers remember. They begin to meander again to find their own path of least resistance, to reclaim the floodplains and deltas that are so vital to the health of the entire ecosystem. This is a profound and beautiful act of remembering a return to a more natural and resilient state. This healing of the rivers also raises a deep philosophical question about our relationship with nature. We have long viewed nature as a resource to be exploited, a tool to be used for our own purposes. We built dams to generate electricity and to control floods. These were not acts of malice, but acts of ambition, of a desire to shape the world to our will. But what if the true purpose of a river is not to serve us, but to simply be a river, to flow, to meander, to flood, to carve the landscape, to support a vast and complex web of life? The truth is, we don't really know for sure what the true purpose of a river is. It's one of those mysteries that is hidden in plain sight. In this new world, we are forced to let go of our preconceived notions and simply observe, to listen to the ancient patient song of the water as it finds its own way. This brings us to a core scientific concept, the hydrological cycle. We all learned about it in school: evaporation, condensation, precipitation. But in our new half-wild world, this cycle would become more vibrant and more robust. The vast interconnected forests that are now returning would act as giant sponges holding water in the soil and slowly releasing it into the rivers and streams. This would reduce the severity of both floods and droughts, creating a more stable and predictable environment for all life. The restored wetlands would act as natural filters, cleaning the water of pollutants and providing a crucial habitat for a host of birdfish and insect species. The planet's circulatory system would be functioning at its peak, and we as observers would be able to see and appreciate its complexity and its resilience. Remember how we talked about the human brain as a theater? In our old world, the constant linear flow of information often mirrored the straight lines of our channeled rivers. We wanted a clear, direct path to our goals, a predictable outcome. But in our new half-wild world, the mind would have to become more like a meandering river itself. It would have to learn to embrace the unexpected detours, the slow, patient pace of change, and the beautiful, complex patterns that emerge from a less controlled environment. This is not a loss of focus, but a gain of a deeper, more holistic understanding. It's a return to a more creative, more intuitive way of thinking. So as we watch the rivers remember their way, let's remember that we are also on a journey of discovery. We are discovering the hidden resilience of the planet, the subtle poetry of its natural cycles, and the profound wisdom of its ancient winding paths. We are learning that the most beautiful and powerful things are often the ones that are left alone, the ones that are allowed to simply be themselves. From the whispering rivers, our gaze now turns to the vast living heart of the planet itself, the oceans. We often think of the oceans as a single uniform entity, but in reality, they are a mosaic of countless ecosystems, each with its own unique life and rhythm. In our old world, these great waters suffered under the weight of our presence. Plastic choked their currents, pollutants poisoned their depths, and overfishing stripped them of their vitality. But in our new half-wild world, where we have set aside half the planet for nature, the oceans, too, begin to breathe deeply again. This is a restoration of a scale we can barely begin to comprehend. The first thing to change is the silence. We talked about the quiet on land, but the deep ocean has its own unique symphony, a chorus of clicks, whistles, and songs that travel through the water for thousands of miles. The noise from our shipping, our sonar, and our offshore drilling once drowned out this ancient language. But now, as the human presence on the seas diminishes, the natural sounds return. The whales, those magnificent ancient singers of the deep, can communicate with each other over vast distances again. The dolphins can hunt more effectively their echolocation, unhindered by the din of human activity. This return to natural acoustics is not just a pleasant change. It is a fundamental restoration of the deep ocean's social fabric. It's a reminder that the ocean is not just a body of water, but a vast and complex network of interconnected lives. And as the seas quiet down, the life within them begins to flourish with incredible speed. A little known but fascinating scientific fact is that coral reefs, those vibrant rainforests of the sea, can recover from bleaching events surprisingly quickly when the stressors are removed. When the water temperature stabilizes and the pollution ceases, the corals can over time begin to regrow and repopulate. The fish once depleted by overfishing begin to return in staggering numbers, their populations rebounding with a force that would seem impossible in our old world. This is a scientific principle, known as a marine protected area, writ large across half the globe. When we give a piece of the ocean a chance to heal, it doesn't just heal itself. It begins to seed life into the surrounding areas, creating a ripple effect of new life and vitality. It's an affirmation of the profound resilience of the natural world. This raises a deep philosophical question about our own understanding of time. In our human world, we often think in terms of decades or centuries. We see an ancient coral reef and think of it as a permanent feature. But the truth is, the ocean operates on a timescale far longer than ours. The deep-sea trenches, for example, are home to species that have been evolving in a world of total darkness and immense pressure for millions of years. They are living fossils, windows into an ancient past. In our new world, with the distracting noise of our own presence removed, we would be forced to confront this different kind of time. We would have to learn to see the ocean not as a resource, but as a living, breathing entity that has a history and a future that extend far beyond our own. And what about the deep biological wonders that are still undiscovered? Scientists still wonder about the mysteries of the deep sea. We have better maps of the surface of Mars than we do of the floor of our own oceans. We are still discovering new species of glowing fish, strange bioluminescent creatures, and ecosystems built around volcanic vents that operate on a completely different set of rules than life on the surface. Our half-wild ocean would become a vast living laboratory, a source of endless wonder and new knowledge. It's a place where we would be forced to confront the humbling reality that for all our scientific progress, there is still so much that we don't know, so much that is still a mystery. This brings us to a core scientific concept, the carbon cycle. The ocean is one of the planet's most important carbon sinks. It absorbs a vast amount of the carbon dioxide from our atmosphere, helping to regulate our climate. The health of the ocean is directly tied to the health of our planet's climate. In our old world, with rising ocean temperatures and acidification, this system was in danger of breaking down. But in our new half-wild world, a healthy, thriving ocean would be able to do its job more effectively. The vast forests of kelp, those giant underwater trees, would absorb more carbon. The restored phytoplankton, those microscopic plants that are the very base of the oceanic food web, would flourish, pulling more carbon from the atmosphere. The oceanic lungs would be breathing deeply again, and the planet as a whole would be healthier because of it. Remember how we talked about the human brain as a theater. In our old world, the constant linear flow of information often mirrored the straight lines of our channeled rivers. But the ocean is not linear. It is a world of currents and tides of a constant cyclical rhythm. In this new world, our minds would have to learn to embrace this different kind of logic. We would have to learn to think in terms of cycles and connections, of the delicate balance of life, and of the profound interconnectedness of everything. This is not a loss of focus, but a gain of a deeper, more holistic understanding. So, as we imagine the oceanic lungs breathing deeply, let's remember that we are not just giving back to the planet. We are also giving back to ourselves. We are restoring a part of our own humanity, a part that has been dulled by the noise and the distractions of our modern world. We are learning to listen to a different kind of truth, a truth that is spoken not in words, but in the silent dance of the currents, the songs of the whales, and the slow, patient unfolding of life in the deep. This is the sound of a world becoming whole again, and it is a sound we would do well to listen to. As the oceans find their voice, and the rivers remember their ancient paths, a more subtle yet equally profound transformation is taking place on a cellular level. It's an intricate, invisible dance that underpins all life on our planet, the weaving of genetic threads. In our old world, with its fragmented habitats and its vast, sprawling cities, we had inadvertently created a kind of genetic isolation. Animal and plant populations were cut off from one another, separated by concrete barriers and deforested lands. This led to a loss of genetic diversity, a weakening of the very fabric of life. But in our new half-wild world, where half the planet is set aside for nature, a new kind of connectedness is being forged. This is the reestablishment of genetic corridors. A genetic corridor is a fancy term for a pathway that allows for the movement of genes, for the migration of animals, and the dispersal of plants. Imagine a highway not for cars, but for life itself. These corridors are crucial for the long-term survival of a species. They allow for the mixing of genes, which prevents inbreeding and ensures that a population has the genetic tools it needs to adapt to changing environmental conditions, to fight off new diseases, and to thrive in a world that is always in flux. This is a core concept in the field of conservation biology, and in our new world, it would be happening on a global scale. The once fragmented populations of bears, deer, and even tiny insects would begin to intermingle again, creating a richer, more resilient, genetic tapestry. This leads to a fascinating scientific concept. We often overlook the profound importance of gene flow. Gene flow is the transfer of genetic material from one population to another. It's the lifeblood of evolution, the engine that drives change and adaptation. Without gene flow, a population becomes stagnant, a genetic island with no connection to the outside world. This can lead to a host of problems, from a reduced ability to fight off disease to a vulnerability to environmental changes. But in our new half-wild world, the floodgates of gene flow would be open again. The winds would carry the pollen of plants from one forest to another. The birds would carry the seeds of fruits over vast distances. The animals would migrate to new lands, bringing with them a rich and diverse genetic heritage. This isn't just a biological process. It's a profound and beautiful act of reconnection, a mending of the very threads that hold all life together. And what about the deep philosophical questions this raises? We as humans have often been obsessed with the idea of purity, with the concept of a purebred species, or a pure race. But the truth is, purity in nature is a myth. Life in its truest form is a messy, beautiful, and constant process of mixing and adaptation. It is a dialogue between different genes, different species, and different environments. In our new world, we would be forced to let go of our preconceived notions of purity and embrace the true nature of life itself, a constant, vibrant, and beautiful tangle of genetic threads. The truth is, we don't really know for sure what new species might emerge from this new, rich, genetic landscape. It's one of those beautiful, unanswered questions that would become a part of our daily lives. This brings us to a little-known but mind-bending scientific fact, the concept of horizontal gene transfer. We're taught in school that genes are passed down vertically from parent to offspring. But in the world of bacteria and viruses, genes can be passed horizontally from one organism to another that is not its offspring. This is a fundamental part of how bacteria evolve and share traits like antibiotic resistance. In our new half-wild world, with its rich and complex ecosystems, the lines between species might become even more blurred. We might see a rapid acceleration of evolution, a burst of new life and new adaptations that would be a source of endless wonder and new knowledge. Remember how we talked about the human brain as a theater? In our old world, our thoughts were often linear and fragmented, much like our divided landscapes. We thought in terms of individual problems and individual solutions. But in our new half-wild world, our minds would have to become more like a tangled, interconnected food web. We would have to learn to see the connections between everything, to understand that a change in one place can have a ripple effect on 1,000 others. This is not a loss of focus, but a gain of a deeper, more holistic understanding. It's a return to a more creative, more intuitive way of thinking. So as we contemplate this intricate tangle of genetic threads, let's remember that we are not just giving back to the planet. We are also giving back to ourselves. We are restoring a part of our own humanity, a part that has been dulled by the noise and the distractions of our modern world. We are learning to listen to a different kind of truth, a truth that is spoken not in words, but in the silent dance of genes, the slow, patient unfolding of life, and the profound interconnectedness of everything. This is the sound of a world becoming whole again, and it is a sound we would do well to listen to. From the intricate tangle of genetic threads, our perspective now widens to encompass the planet as a whole, to a phenomenon that has for centuries defined our relationship with the Earth, its climate. In our old world, with its relentless burning of fossil fuels and its vast deforestation, we had inadvertently given the planet a fever. The atmosphere became a blanket-trapping heat and leading to a cascade of global changes. But in our new half-wild world, where half the planet is set aside for nature, something extraordinary happens. The planet's fever begins to break. This is a story of carbon sinks, a core concept in climate science. A carbon sink is any natural or artificial reservoir that accumulates and stores some carbon-containing chemical compound for an indefinite period. In our old world, Our forests and oceans, the two great carbon sinks of the planet, were under immense pressure. We were deforesting the land and polluting the seas, weakening their ability to absorb the excess carbon dioxide we were pumping into the atmosphere. But in our new world, the great green expanse we've imagined is teeming with new life. The returning forests, those magnificent breathing entities, begin to pull massive amounts of carbon from the atmosphere, storing it in their wood, their leaves, and their roots. The restored oceans, with their thriving kelp forests and their revitalized phytoplankton, also begin to do their job more effectively. The planet is, in essence, building a new, more powerful immune system to fight off the fever we gave it. And as the carbon sinks do their work, the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere begins to slowly, patiently decrease. This is not a sudden dramatic event, but a slow unfolding process that would take decades, maybe even centuries. It's a bit like a fever breaking in a human body. It doesn't happen in an instant. It happens in a gradual, almost imperceptible way. The planet's temperature, which had been on a relentless rise, would begin to stabilize. The extreme weather events, the intense storms, and the prolonged droughts would become less frequent and less severe. The ice caps, those ancient frozen libraries of our planet's history, would stop their rapid retreat and begin to find a new stable equilibrium. This is the story of a planet finding its balance again, a story that is both scientific and deeply poetic. This raises a deep philosophical question about our own understanding of our place in time. We, as a species, tend to think of ourselves as being at the center of the story. We believe that we are the ones who are in control, the ones who are shaping the future. But what if the true story is about the slow, patient unfolding of a planet? Far grander, far older, and far more complex than we could ever imagine. What if our role is not to be the main characters, but to simply be the catalysts? The ones who set in motion a process that is far beyond our control. The truth is, we don't really know for sure what the long-term effects of this great restoration would be. It's one of those beautiful, unanswered questions that would become a part of our daily lives. This brings us to a fascinating, though little-known scientific fact, the concept of albedo. Albedo is a measure of how much light and heat a surface reflects. A white surface like snow or ice has a high albedo. It reflects a lot of sunlight back into space. A dark surface like a forest or the open ocean has a low albedo. It absorbs a lot of sunlight. In our old world, with its shrinking ice caps and its vast deforested lands, the planet's albedo was decreasing, meaning it was absorbing more heat. But in our new half-wild world, with its restored forests and its stabilized ice caps, the planet's albedo would be more balanced. It would be reflecting more heat back into space, helping to further cool the planet. This is a subtle but crucial part of how the planet's fever would break a hidden mechanism in the great complex machine of our climate. Remember how we talked about the human brain as a theater? In our old world, the constant drama of climate change was a source of anxiety and fear. We felt helpless, small, and out of control. But in our new half-wild world, that anxiety would begin to fade. We would be witnesses to a slow, patient act of healing. We would be forced to let go of our fear and to embrace a new kind of hope, a hope that is born not from a technological fix, but from a profound act of humility and respect for the natural world. This is not a loss of control, but a gain of a deeper, more profound sense of peace. So as we imagine the planet's fever breaking, let's remember that we are not just giving back to the planet. We are also giving back to ourselves. We are restoring a part of our own humanity, a part that has been dulled by the noise and the distractions of our modern world. We are learning to listen to a different kind of truth, a truth that is spoken not in words, but in the slow, patient unfolding of the seasons, the return of a stable climate, and the profound interconnectedness of everything. This is the sound of a world becoming whole again, and it is a sound we would do well to listen to as the planet's fever breaks and the wild half begins its great slow respiration. our attention must now turn to ourselves. What does it mean to be human in this new world? What does our society look like when we've collectively decided to live on a single, shared half of the planet? This is not just a logistical problem, it's a deep societal and cultural shift. It forces us to re-evaluate our most fundamental values, our ideas of ownership of progress and of community. This is the beginning of a new chapter in the human story, one defined not by expansion, but by a quiet, deliberate contraction. The first most immediate change is the concept of density. In our old world, we often saw density as a negative something to be avoided. We built sprawling suburbs and individual houses on large plots of land, all in a quest for more space. But in this new world, with half the planet set aside, and density would become a necessity, and perhaps a source of strength. Our cities would become more compact, more vertical, more interwoven with green spaces. We would be forced to relearn the art of living in close proximity, of sharing resources, and of building a community not on the basis of a shared fence line, but on the basis of a shared purpose. This is a scientific and sociological concept that cities around the world are already grappling with. A well-designed, dense city can be more efficient, more sustainable, and more vibrant than a sprawling suburb. It can reduce our energy consumption, our carbon footprint, and our reliance on cars. This leads to a fascinating little-known scientific fact about human behavior: the concept of proxemics. The study of our use of space suggests that our social relationships are deeply influenced by the physical distances between us. In our old sprawling world, we often created social distance by creating physical distance. But in our new dense world, we would be forced to create new social rituals, new ways of interacting, and new forms of community. We might find ourselves knowing our neighbors' names, again sharing a communal garden, or simply having a daily conversation on a bustling street. This is not a loss of privacy, but a gain of a deeper, more profound sense of connection. This raises a deep philosophical question about our very definition of progress. For centuries, we've defined progress in terms of growing economies, growing cities, growing populations. We've seen a bigger car, a bigger house, and a bigger bank account as a sign of success. But what if progress is not about more, but about better? What if it's about a healthier planet, a more connected community, a more peaceful and fulfilling life? The truth is, we don't really know for sure what the true definition of progress is. It's one of those beautiful, unanswered questions that would become a part of our daily lives. And what about our relationship with work? Our old world was built on the idea of a 9-to-5 job, a daily commute, and a relentless focus on productivity. But in our new dense world, with its shared resources and its emphasis on community, our relationship with work would have to change. We might find ourselves working closer to home or even from home in a more flexible and more collaborative way. We might find ourselves valuing skills like craftsmanship, gardening, and community building just as much as we value a high-paying corporate job. This is not a loss of ambition, but a redirection of it from a personal quest for wealth to a collective quest for a better, more sustainable way of life. Remember how we talked about the human brain as a theater? In our old world, the stage was filled with the dramas of consumerism and individual achievement. We were told to buy more, to be more, to have more. But in our new half-wild world, the stage would be cleared. The dramas would become more primal, more ancient. The challenge of living sustainably, of building a strong community, of finding a new balance with the natural world. These would be the new stories we would tell ourselves. This is not a loss of purpose, but a gain of a deeper, more meaningful one. So as we imagine humanity's new footprint, let's remember that we are not just giving back to the planet. We are also giving back to ourselves. We are restoring a part of our own humanity, a part that has been dulled by the noise and the distractions of our modern world. We are learning to listen to a different kind of truth, a truth that is spoken not in words, but in the bustle of a dense, vibrant city, the shared labor of a community garden, and the profound interconnectedness of everything. This is the sound of a world becoming whole again, and it is a sound we would do well to listen to. As humanity settles into its new compact existence, a different kind of story is being written on the land we have left behind. It's a story told not in words, but in the slow, patient decay of our civilization. The structures we once built with such pride, the bridges, the skyscrapers, the suburban homes, begin a long, quiet process of becoming something else entirely. This is the curious case of the ghost forests, a poetic name for a very real and fascinating process of nature reclaiming our artifacts. Think of a large abandoned warehouse. To us, it's a symbol of decay, a monument to a forgotten industry. But to nature, it is a new landscape, a new opportunity. The roof, no longer maintained, begins to leak. The water, a powerful agent of change, begins to rust the steel beams and rot the wooden supports in the cracks of the concrete floor. Wind-blown seeds find purchase. A tiny sapling, a pioneer species we talked about earlier, begins its slow, patient climb towards the light. Its roots, like patient subterranean fingers, begin to widen those cracks, seeking out water and nutrients. Over decades, the building becomes a skeleton, a trellis for new life. The walls are covered in ivy, the windows are shattered and replaced by bird nests, and the floor becomes a rich, loamy bed for new plants. This is not a destructive process. It's a creative one. The old is not erased. It is simply transformed into the new. This process is a beautiful example of a scientific concept known as bioremediation. We often think of bioremediation as a human-controlled process using bacteria to clean up an oil spill, for example. But in this scenario, nature is performing its own grand act of bioremediation on a planetary scale. The plants that grow in our abandoned cities are not just pretty additions. They are actively breaking down our toxins, pulling heavy metals from the soil, and filtering pollutants from the air. The fungi that colonize our rotting wood and our crumbling concrete are breaking down complex chemical compounds into simple, reusable nutrients. Our waste, our pollution, our forgotten infrastructure, it all becomes raw material for a new, more resilient ecosystem. This raises a deep philosophical question about the nature of impermanence. We, as humans, have a deep-seated fear of decay and of death. We build our monuments out of stone and steel, hoping they will last forever, hoping they will be a testament to our existence. But what if the true testament to our existence is not the things we leave behind, but the way we allow nature to transform them? What if our true legacy is not a monument to our past, but a fertile ground for a new future? The truth is, we don't really know for sure what future generations would make of our ruins. It's one of those beautiful, unanswered questions that would become a part of our daily lives. And what about the deep biological mysteries that are still unsolved? We are still learning about the incredible resilience of life in extreme environments. We've found bacteria that can live in the boiling hot vents of the deep sea, and organisms that can survive in the frozen deserts of Antarctica. In our new half-wild world, we might discover new species, new forms of life that have adapted to live in the unique and strange ecosystems we have left behind. A new kind of moss that can thrive on a concrete skyscraper. A new kind of bird that has learned to nest in the rusted hulk of a car. These are the subtle, beautiful dramas that would unfold in our ghost forests, a testament to the fact that life in all its forms is an unstoppable force. Remember how we talked about the human brain as a theater? In our old world, our minds were often filled with the drama of building, of creating, of achieving. We were obsessed with the idea of a blank slate, of building something from nothing. But in our new half-wild world, our minds would have to become more like a canvas that is constantly being painted over. We would have to learn to see the beauty in decay, the potential in rust, and the life in a crumbling wall. This is not a loss of creativity, but a gain of a deeper, more profound kind of imagination. It's a return to a more creative, more intuitive way of thinking. So as we contemplate the ghost forests, let's remember that we are not just giving back to the planet. We are also giving back to ourselves. We are restoring a part of our own humanity, a part that has been dulled by the noise and the distractions of our modern world. We are learning to listen to a different kind of truth, a truth that is spoken not in words, but in the rustle of leaves on a forgotten street, the slow, patient climb of a vine up a crumbling wall, and the profound interconnectedness of everything. This is the sound of a world becoming whole again, and it is a sound we would do well to listen to. As the ghost forests stand as silent witnesses to our past, the natural world we've allowed to return is busily re-establishing its own ancient rhythms. We have talked about the return of rivers and the clearing of the skies, but these are all part of a larger, more intricate dance, the memory of seasons. In our old world, with its rampant climate change, the seasons were becoming a chaotic and unpredictable affair. Springs were arriving earlier, winters were becoming warmer, and the very concept of a predictable seasonal cycle was being eroded. But in our new half-wild world, where the planet's fever is breaking, the seasons begin to fall back into their natural ancient cadence. This is a story of phenology, a scientific concept that studies the timing of natural events, such as the budding of leaves in spring or the migration of birds in the fall. In our old world, these natural clocks were being thrown out of sync. Birds were migrating before their food sources had arrived, and flowers were blooming before their pollinators had emerged from hibernation. This created a cascade of ecological problems, a kind of biological dissonance. But in our new half-wild world, with its stable climate and its restored ecosystems, the phenological clocks begin to reset. The seasons become a more reliable rhythm, a predictable and gentle song that all life can dance to. This brings us to a fascinating and little-known scientific fact, the concept of teleconnections. Teleconnections are the long-distance climate connections that link weather patterns in one part of the world to another. For example, the El Niño phenomenon in the Pacific Ocean can influence rainfall in North America and droughts in Africa. In our old world, with its disrupted climate systems, these teleconnections were becoming more chaotic and more extreme. But in our new half-wild world, with its healthy oceans and its restored forests, these teleconnections would become more stable and more predictable. The planet's climate system would be functioning at its peak, and the weather patterns, which seemed so random and so violent in our old world, would begin to make more sense. The planet would be communicating with itself, and we, as observers, would be able to listen in on the conversation. This raises a deep philosophical question about our own perception of time. We, as humans, tend to think of time as a linear progression, a straight line from the past to the future. But the natural world operates on a cyclical model. It's a constant patient cycle of birth, growth, decay, and rebirth. In our new half-wild world with its restored seasons and its predictable rhythms, our own perception of time would likely shift. We might find ourselves living on a more natural clock, attuned to the rising and setting of the sun, the changing phases of the moon, and the slow, patient unfolding of the seasons. This is not a loss of focus, but a gain of a deeper, more holistic understanding. And what about the deep biological mysteries that are still unsolved? We are still learning about the complex ways in which the atmosphere and the biosphere interact. We know that trees release volatile organic compounds that can influence cloud formation and rainfall. But the truth is, we don't really know for sure just how profound and how complex this interaction is. In our new half-wild world, with its vast interconnected forests, we might be able to finally study this relationship in its full, unhindered glory. We might discover that the trees are not just reacting to the weather, but are actively helping to create it. It's one of those beautiful, unanswered questions that would become a part of our daily lives. Remember how we talked about the human brain as a theater? In our old world, the stage was filled with the dramas of constant change, of a world that seemed to be spinning out of control. We were filled with anxiety and a sense of helplessness. But in our new half-wild world, the stage would be filled with the quiet, gentle drama of the seasons. The return of the migrating birds, the blooming of the wildflowers, the slow, patient unfolding of the leaves in the spring. These would be the new stories we would tell ourselves, the new rhythms we would live by. This is not a loss of purpose, but a gain of a deeper, more meaningful one. So as we imagine the memory of seasons, let's remember that we are not just giving back to the planet. We are also giving back to ourselves. We are restoring a part of our own humanity, a part that has been dulled by the noise and the distractions of our modern world. We are learning to listen to a different kind of truth, a truth that is spoken not in words, but in the rustle of leaves in the fall, the first snow of winter, and the warm, gentle kiss of the sun in the spring. This is the sound of a world becoming whole again, and it is a sound we would do well to listen to. As the seasons find their ancient rhythm and the landscape transforms, we are left with a new kind of world, one that is both ancient and brand new. This new world, this tapestry of life woven over our old one, also presents a profound challenge to our understanding of history. In our old world, history was a linear narrative, a story of kings and empires, of wars and revolutions, of our constant struggle to conquer and control the planet. But in our new half-wild world, history becomes something else entirely. It becomes a story of archaeological ghosts, of the slow, patient decay of our artifacts and the stories they tell. Think of an archaeologist 1,000 years from now, digging in what was once a bustling city. They wouldn't find grand monuments and pristine artifacts. Instead, they would find layers of our time, a geological stratum of plastic, of concrete, of glass. They would find the fossilized remains of our cars, our phones, our refrigerators. These would be the new artifacts, the new clues to our existence. They would have to piece together a story not from our written records, which would have long since decayed, but from the things we left behind. This is a scientific concept known as material culture, the study of how artifacts reflect the values, beliefs, and practices of a society. In this new world, our material culture would be a testament not to our ambition, but to our impermanence. This brings us to a fascinating and little-known scientific fact, the concept of technofossils. A technofossil is a long-lasting artifact of human technology that will eventually become part of the geological record. Our plastic water bottles, our concrete foundations, our microchips. These are all technofossils in the making. They will outlast us by millions of years, a strange and silent record of our time on this planet. In our new half-wild world, these technofossils would become the new evidence of our past, a kind of geological language that future generations and perhaps even future species would have to learn to read. This raises a deep philosophical question about the nature of legacy. We as humans have a deep-seated desire to leave a mark on the world, to be remembered. We build statues, we write books, we create art, all in the hope that our memory will live on. But what if our true legacy is not the things we build, but the stories we left behind? What if our legacy is not a monument to our greatness, but a quiet, humbling reminder of our impermanence? The truth is, we don't really know for sure how future generations would interpret our ruins. It's one of those beautiful unanswered questions that would become a part of our daily lives. And what about the deep biological mysteries that are still unsolved? We are still learning about how ancient civilizations interacted with their environment. We're using new technologies like paleogenetics, the study of ancient DNA, to piece together the story of our past. In our new half-wild world, these technologies would become even more important. We might be able to find ancient human DNA in the soil of our ghost forests, a ghostly echo of the people who once lived there. We might be able to use ancient DNA to piece together the story of the animals and plants that lived alongside us, a story that was lost in the chaos of our old world. This is not just a study of the past. It's a study of our place in the web of life, a study of our profound interconnectedness with all living things. Remember how we talked about the human brain as a theater? In our old world, the stage was filled with the drama of our history, a history of our own making. We were the protagonists, the heroes, the villains. But in our new half-wild world, the stage would be filled with a different kind of drama. It would be the drama of a world that is healing itself, of a world that is slowly, patiently absorbing our past and transforming it into a new future. We would be forced to let go of our role as the main characters and embrace a new, more humble role as silent observers, as students of a history far grander and far more ancient than our own. So as we contemplate this new kind of history, let's remember that we are not just giving back to the planet. We are also giving back to ourselves. We are restoring a part of our own humanity, a part that has been dulled by the noise and the distractions of our modern world. We are learning to listen to a different kind of truth, a truth that is spoken not in words, but in the rustle of leaves on a forgotten street, the slow, patient climb of a vine up a crumbling wall, and the profound interconnectedness of everything. This is the sound of a world becoming whole again, and it is a sound we would do well to listen to. As the old world crumbles and the new world reemerges, a different kind of silence falls upon humanity. It is not the silence of a quiet room, but the vast, expansive quiet of a world that is no longer dominated by our presence. This is the geometry of solitude. For generations, we lived in a world of crowded spaces, of constant human interaction, and of a relentless sense of our own importance. But in our new half-wild world, where we live on a shared compact half of the planet, we are forced to confront the deep philosophical implications of being alone. Not alone as in lonely, but alone as in being a small, insignificant part of a vast, ancient, and powerful whole. This is a deep dive into the concept of awe, a core emotion in human psychology. Awe is that feeling of profound wonder and reverence we experience when confronted with something vast and powerful, something that transcends our normal frame of reference. It's the feeling we get when we look at the Milky Way on a clear night, or when we stand on the edge of a vast canyon, or when we are in the presence of a powerful ancient forest. In our old world, with its constant noise and its endless distractions, we had very little time for awe. But in our new half-wild world, awe would become a part of our daily lives. We would be constantly reminded of our own smallness, of our own impermanence, and of the profound beauty and power of the natural world. This is not a loss of ego. It is a profound and beautiful expansion of our consciousness. This brings us to a fascinating and little-known scientific fact about our brains: the concept of the default mode network. This is a network of brain regions that is active when our mind is wandering, when we are daydreaming, or when we are thinking about ourselves. It's the part of our brain that creates our sense of self, our sense of identity. But a growing body of research suggests that when we experience awe, this network is quieted. Our sense of self fades away, and we feel a deeper sense of connection to the world around us. In our new half-wild world, with its vast open spaces and its breathtaking natural beauty, we would be constantly quieting our default mode network. We would be spending less time thinking about ourselves and more time thinking about the world and our place in it. This is not a loss of identity. It is a profound and beautiful expansion of it. This raises a deep philosophical question about our place in the universe. For centuries, we've believed that we are at the center of everything. We've built our philosophies, our religions, and our sciences around the idea of our own importance. But what if we are not the center? What if we are just a small fleeting part of a vast and ancient story? What if our true purpose is not to conquer and control, but to simply witness and to learn? The truth is, we don't really know for sure. It's one of those beautiful unanswered questions that would become a part of our daily lives. And what about the deep biological mysteries that are still unsolved? We are still learning about how our consciousness works, about how our brains create our sense of self. A fascinating and mind-bending concept is the idea of entanglement in quantum physics. two particles can be linked in such a way that they share the same fate, no matter how far apart they are. In a way, this is a beautiful metaphor for our new world. As we let go of our ego, our sense of a separate self, we might find that we are entangled with the world around us. We might feel a deeper sense of connection to the animals, the trees and the rivers, a connection that is not just philosophical, but biological. We might discover that our own well-being is not separate from the well-being of the planet, but is deeply and fundamentally intertwined with it. Remember how we talked about the human brain as a theater. In our old world, the stage was filled with the dramas of our own making, the endless monologue of our own thoughts. But in our new half-wild world, the stage would be cleared. The drama would be replaced by a quiet, patient observation of the world. We would be witnesses to the great silent drama of a world that is healing itself. This is not a loss of purpose. It is a gain of a deeper, more profound one. So as we contemplate the geometry of solitude, let's remember that we are not just giving back to the planet. We are also giving back to ourselves. We are restoring a part of our own humanity, a part that has been dulled by the noise and the distractions of our modern world. We are learning to listen to a different kind of truth, a truth that is spoken not in words, but in the vast, expansive quiet of a world that is no longer ours alone. This is the sound of a world becoming whole again, and it is a sound we would do well to listen to. In our journey through a world where half the planet is wild, we've explored the return of rivers and the healing of the climate, the rebirth of ecosystems, and the profound solitude that comes with it. Now we must turn our attention to the final and perhaps most complex part of this thought experiment, the delicate weaving of worlds. What happens when the two halves of the planet, the wild and the human, are no longer separate? What happens when our dense, compact cities press up against the untamed wilderness? This is a story of a new kind of interaction, a new set of challenges, and a new, more profound relationship with the world around us. The first and most obvious challenge is the physical one. In our old world, we built fences, roads, and cities to keep the wild out. We saw it as an intruder, a threat to our safety and our way of life. But in our new half-wild world, we would have to learn to live with the wild as a neighbor. A bear might wander into a communal garden. A coyote might make its den in an abandoned park. This is a scientific concept known as habitat fragmentation, but in this new world, we are reversing the process. We are building a new kind of coexistence, one that requires a new set of rules and a new kind of respect. We would have to learn to store our food in a way that doesn't attract animals to drive more slowly on the roads that border the wilderness, and to teach our children to respect the wild as a powerful and unpredictable force, not as a playground. This brings us to a fascinating and little-known scientific fact, the concept of ecological memory. We talked about the river's memory, but ecosystems as a whole have a memory. It's the ability of an ecosystem to retain the legacy of its past disturbances and to use that legacy to inform its future. In our new half-wild world, the ecosystems that are returning would have a memory of our past presence. They would remember the pollution, the deforestation, and the changes we made to the landscape. But they would also have a memory of their own resilience, of their own ability to heal and to adapt. This ecological memory would be a powerful force, a kind of biological wisdom that would help the two halves of the planet to coexist in a new, more harmonious way. This raises a deep philosophical question about the nature of a shared world. We have long believed that we are the sole occupants of this planet, that we have a right to shape it to our will. But what if we are not the owners but the tenants? What if we are just one species among many, and we have a responsibility to share the world with all the others? The truth is, we don't really know for sure what the long-term relationship between our species and the wild half would look like. It's one of those beautiful unanswered questions that would become a part of our daily lives. And what about the deep biological mysteries that are still unsolved? We are still learning about how different species interact with each other. A fascinating and mind-bending concept is the idea of symbiosis. a close and long-term biological interaction between two different biological organisms. We often think of symbiosis as a mutually beneficial relationship, like the one between a clownfish and a sea anemone. But there are also parasitic and commensalistic relationships. In our new half-wild world, we might discover new and strange symbiotic relationships between the human world and the wild one. A new kind of bacteria might evolve to break down our plastic waste. A new kind of bird might learn to nest in our buildings, and in return, it might help to control the insect population. The line between the human world and the wild one would become more and more blurred, and we would have to learn to see ourselves as a part of a much larger, more complex web of life. Remember how we talked about the human brain as a theater? In our old world, the stage was filled with the dramas of our own making, the endless monologue of our own thoughts. But in our new half-wild world, the stage would be filled with a different kind of drama. It would be the drama of a world that is healing itself, of a world that is slowly, patiently absorbing our past and transforming it into a new future. We would be forced to let go of our role as the main characters and embrace a new, more humble role as silent observers, as students of a history far grander and far more ancient than our own. So as we contemplate this delicate weaving of worlds, let's remember that we are not just giving back to the planet. We are also giving back to ourselves. We are restoring a part of our own humanity, a part that has been dulled by the noise and the distractions of our modern world. We are learning to listen to a different kind of truth, a truth that is spoken not in words, but in the rustle of leaves on a forgotten street, the slow patient climb of a vine up a crumbling wall, and the profound interconnectedness of everything. This is the sound of a world becoming whole again, and it is a sound we would do well to listen to. After our long journey through the silent streets and over the wild rivers past the whispering ghosts of our past and into the profound solitude of our new world, we arrive at our destination. It is not a place, but a moment, the first sunrise on the wild half. This is the culmination of our thought experiment, the final reflective look at the profound beauty and the immense responsibility of this imagined world. It's a moment to tie together all the threads we've woven, from the quiet hum of the Earth's microbiome to the cosmic ballet of the stars, and to find a new, deeper meaning in our place in the universe. As the first light of dawn spills over the horizon, it does not fall on a world of concrete and glass, but on a world of green and blue. It illuminates a landscape that is both ancient and brand new, a tapestry woven from the threads of our past and the possibilities of our future. We see the great green expanse not as a wilderness to be feared, but as a vibrant, living partner. We see the rivers no longer as resources to be harnessed, but as arteries of life, flowing with a purpose far grander than our own. We see the oceans no longer as a void to be filled with our waste, but as the great breathing lungs of the planet, teeming with a life that has been set free. This is a world that has been restored not by our hand, but by our humility. This brings us to a deep and final philosophical question. What is the meaning of a life lived in this world? In our old world, we often found meaning in our work, in our achievements, in our relentless pursuit of more. But in this new world, we would find meaning in a different way. We would find meaning in the quiet act of observation, in the humble recognition of our own smallness, and in the profound sense of connection to the world around us. We would find meaning not in what we take from the world, but in what we give back. The truth is, we don't really know for sure what a truly meaningful life looks like. It's one of those beautiful unanswered questions that would become a part of our daily lives. And what about the deep biological mysteries that are still unsolved? We are still learning about how consciousness works, about how our brains create our sense of self. A fascinating and mind-bending concept is the idea of biophilia, the deep-seated human need for a connection to nature. We are at our core biological creatures, and our brains have been wired by millions of years of evolution to find peace and wonder in the natural world. In our new half-wild world, we would be giving our biophilia a chance to thrive. We would be feeding a fundamental part of our humanity, a part that has been starved for generations. This is not a loss of our humanity, but a restoration of it. Remember how we talked about the human brain as a theater? In our old world, the stage was filled with the dramas of our own making, the endless monologue of our own thoughts. But in our new half-wild world, the stage would be filled with a different kind of drama. It would be the drama of a world that is healing itself, of a world that is slowly, patiently absorbing our past and transforming it into a new future. We would be forced to let go of our role as the main characters and embrace a new, more humble role as silent observers, as students of a history far grander and far more ancient than our own. So as we contemplate this first sunrise, let's remember that we are not just giving back to the planet. We are also giving back to ourselves. We are restoring a part of our own humanity, a part that has been dulled by the noise and the distractions of our modern world. We are learning to listen to a different kind of truth, a truth that is spoken not in words, but in the rustle of leaves on a forgotten street, the slow, patient climb of a vine up a crumbling wall, and the profound interconnectedness of everything. This is the sound of a world becoming whole again, and it is a sound we would do well to listen to. And so our journey through this imagined world comes to a close. We have watched the rivers remember their way, and the oceanic lungs breathe deeply. We have listened to the whispers of a wild heart and contemplated the geometry of our solitude. Our minds have wandered through a quiet breathing planet, and our hearts have been filled with a new kind of wonder, a new kind of peace. It's time now to gently bring your awareness back to the room where you are, back to the feeling of the surface beneath you and to the soft sound of your own breathing. I'd like to gently ask one last time, where is the place you're staying now? The time in that place at this very moment, how is it flowing? Wherever and whenever you are, I hope you found a moment of quiet, a moment of peace in our journey tonight. This is a story not of a world lost, but of a world found. A world that has always been here, just waiting for us to listen. If you enjoyed our time together, a gentle thumbs up on the video is always appreciated. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to our channel for more journeys like this one. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Sleep well, my companion, wherever and whenever you are. Sweet dreams.